Jane Goodall, the legendary primatologist and zoologist, has died in California. Ingrid Newkirk responds to the news. That's next on the PETA podcast with Emil Guillermo. Welcome to the PETA podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at animal rights. Brought to you by PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On this episode, Jane Goodall, the London-born primatologist considered the world's premier expert on chimpanzees after studying them in the wild for more than 60 years, is dead. Goodall was on a speaking tour and died in Los Angeles. She was 91. PETA co-founder and principal Ingrid Newkirk remembers when she first met Goodall in 1984 during a fight to close the very first labs experimenting on chimpanzees. In this episode of the PETA podcast, Newkirk remembers the significance and power of Jane Goodall.
I'm awfully sorry she's gone because she was one of those very, very special people who devoted her whole life to improving conditions for primates and other animals. She was a revolutionary. She became from a very quiet student to someone who spoke up and spoke out and made sure injustices for animals were addressed.
And when was the last time you communicated with her or saw her? Because I imagine you had to have some kind of relationship with her.
PETA was always in touch with her because she was such a dynamo, and we have so many cases trying to get animals out of laboratories. I mean, I first met her back, I think it was 1984. We sat privately and talked about the SEMA laboratory, where activists had gone in and had taken a video, which is still online, I believe, on PETA, the SEMA video showing, I think it's called Breaking the Species Barrier. And we had shown that these chimpanzees were kept in what was called isolates, which were solid-walled, really cells that were basically no bigger than perhaps a few inches more than their own bodies. And they had gone out of their minds in them, smashing their heads on either side of this enclosure. It was so solid, it had a breathing mechanism so that no outside air could come in. It had to be filtered through this machine, and they couldn't breathe back into the air. So there was this constant sound of in and out, and it was totally barren. I sat down with her. I showed her the video. She was deeply moved, but she was always a scientist. She wanted to see for herself. And this place, SEMA, this laboratory, would not let anybody in. The activists had gone in surreptitiously at night. And so she told the lab she wanted to come in. And of course, she was Jane Goodall. How could they say no? The papers would have just absolutely gone to town with it. So they let her in. And when she came out, she said it was the worst day of her life. It was the worst thing she had ever seen. These wonderful chimpanzees whom she had studied and sat with in the forests and loved with all her heart, being kept in these hideous containers as if they were dry goods or something. And so that was stopped because of Jane cooperating with PETA. And the last time I spoke to her, it was about the Oregon National Primate Research Center, because she was supporting our campaign that place has to close. It has thousands of monkeys kept in barren steel cages, and they're impregnated and their babies are taken away from them, and all sorts of horrors. I mean, some have died in a cage washer or getting their head stuck in a cage. And she said to the press, it needs to close it down. And I hope that it is going to be closed down. And I urge everybody to get involved to support her and support PETA in closing it down. She was just a great activist.
And that was the Oregon Primate Research Center that you just talked about, and that closure could come, but it still needs some public support.
It certainly does. I mean, she was very forthright. She was very fierce in saying this is what needs to be done. It's 2025. It'll soon be 2026. Unfortunately, she's not here for 2026. But she knew that the time has long passed for us to take our fellow primates who are intelligent, sentient, they feel, they think, and just remove them from their homelands, ship them thousands of miles, sometimes without food or water, in wooden crates, and then put them in this place that's so alien to them. Just somebody turning the doorknob to come into the room makes their heart rates go way up, their pulse rates accelerate, their breathing becomes rapid because they know something horrible is about to be done to them by another species. So she knew all the things that humanity should be reconciling with the natural world. We will carry on that campaign. We will make sure that place closes down, and it will be the first of many to close down.
And that was your last communication with her. What would you say was your best memory of? I mean, you talked about that first lab when you met her back in '84. You talked about the Oregon Primate Research Center campaign now. What do you think is the best time you'll remember, or what you'll remember most about Jane Goodall?
Well, I remember way before Pamela Anderson stopped wearing makeup, bless her heart. She was always a role model of someone who looked natural, wanted to be seen as natural, and she used her intellect, not her looks. She could have made herself up and so on, but she never did. She was always just a very normal woman with a strong sense of right and wrong. And that really impressed me always in seeing her, whether it was in person or on TV or whatever it was. I think she was a terrific role model and still can be. I do remember one day I sent her a copy of Animal Liberation. This is after we had sat down and talked about the chimpanzees in the isolettes, as they were called. And she was going back to Africa, and she did, and she took the book with her. And then she wrote to me and she said, she was in the forest and she could smell for the first time the fruits and the other things, the leaves, the foliage more keenly because she had read that book and decided to stop eating animals. She had become a vegetarian like the chimpanzees she studied, and she felt closer to them and to nature. And she asked me to send her 8 more books so that she could give them to friends and convince them to go vegetarian or vegan too.
She was foremost a scientist. How do you think that helped or hurt her in terms of doing all she could, in terms of the kind of activism you do and that PETA does? How did her being a scientist help or hinder, you think?
Well, I think like many pioneers, she was at first mocked because she was a woman scientist. She had been afforded special privileges by Richard Leakey, Dr. Leakey, who was her mentor, to go out and study chimpanzees. And she was studying them as an ethologist. She was not putting them in a cage as her colleagues did. She was going out to where they lived and watching them without interfering with them. And all this was derided by the scientific community. And she really turned everything on its head. She showed them that you did not have to confine animals and restrict their movement and keep them in unnatural ways in order to have breakthrough information. So she learned so much and then passed on that information that she became an honorary professor here, there, and everywhere, got honorary degrees. And she was lauded for her discoveries about chimpanzees' behavior, about their community, about their relationships, their eating habits, how they get natural antibiotics really from plants, how they look after wounds without a hospital, how they teach their children, all manner of things that increased our knowledge. And she really got people to understand from a very scientific, by-the-book method, but out in the field, that who these animals were, not that they were subjects that you could do anything to, but fellows like ourselves sharing the earth. It was absolutely magnificent.
And really, from her perspective, she was most effective in in persuading others and changing minds. Do you think that'll be her ultimate legacy? She made the world see the animals in a different way?
Oh, very much. She was like the Jacques Cousteau of chimpanzees in the forest, is that suddenly people could really see what it was all about. It was no longer theoretical. She brought these animals to life and showed their characters and their characteristics. She will continue her work through things like Roots and Shoots, which Dr. Mark Bekoff in Colorado is continuing. Her foundation will continue, and her videos are still there. So aside from the Breaking the Barriers video that you can see that she helped us with, that's on the PETA site, there are many other wonderful documentaries and things that I think I know will inspire future generations to be a bit more respectful of all the other forms of life who share this planet with us, or should share it if we weren't so greedy.
And can you imagine a world that did not have a Jane Goodall?
Well, unfortunately, I can imagine a world without Jane Goodall, and we would be further behind because, as human beings, we have a lot of power, especially in the Western world. We can use our voices and we can use all sorts of talents and our influence and so on to open people's minds, to open their hearts, and to get them to understand who animals are. They're someone, not something. And Jane did that. So it's a poorer world without her, and it certainly would have been a poorer world had she not come along.
She's all over the news now, and some people are just getting the word about her passing. What do you think if a regular person out there heard the news, what could they do if they wanted to honor Jane Goodall?
I think the most important thing is to see what she would have wanted you to do. And she was a vegan. And so I think not eating animals would be a marvelous tribute to her and certainly a great help to animals. I think also learning about who animals are and passing that on to youngsters, children, grandchildren, teachers. There are so many resources these days. And we've got them on the PETA site too. There's PETA Kids, PETA Youth, and so on. Those are the kids who are going to be the adults of tomorrow and going to make conservation decisions. They're going to make decisions about exploitation or not exploiting animals. And so just making sure that you pass the word on.
Ingrid, I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Emil, very much. And may she rest in peace.
PETA co-founder and principal Ingrid Newkirk on the passing of Jane Goodall, the primatologist who studied chimpanzees in the wild. See more of Goodall's connection to PETA at PETA.org. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to send a link of the show to your friends. Tell them you like the PETA podcast. You can contact us at PETA.org. You can see me at AMOK.com. Or you can find this podcast on YouTube at Emil Amok1. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to as well as rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by Carbonworks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.